welcome. Welcome to Satsang. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all well. All is always well. Remember, the point of Satsang, the point of this entire teaching is, of course, liberation, attaining self-realization or liberation for yourself. But why do we meet to do that? The question is meant to be left hanging. Why do we come together? Why do we meet here in Satsang? Is it even helpful to us at all? What is the point of this meeting? What is the point of this teaching? We know the ultimate point is total cessation of all suffering. Also known as self-realization or liberation. Nirvana. God realization. Christ consciousness. Well, the purpose of this meeting, I suggest to you, and this is just one expression, the purpose of this meeting is just to be with the teacher, just to be with our teacher. It isn't, the purpose of this meeting isn't to ask questions and receive answers on the verbal level, although that may happen. The purpose of those questions and answers, if they happen, is what? It's just to help us be with our teacher. We're not going to get anywhere really through questions, through answers. But those questions and those answers may help us come closer to our teacher, ourself. Bhagavan Ramana, God, Christ. And we may ask questions and receive answers, but the answer we're really looking for is within ourselves, non-verbal. So this is just one expression, one way of talking about this. But I suggest that the reason we're here is not to talk, although we can talk. Not to ask questions and receive answers, although we may ask questions, we may hear answers. But the real reason we're here is to be with the teacher, to be with our teacher, to be with Guru. Guru just means teacher. Now, there's a Sanskrit word that describes being with the teacher. And I will ask a question now. You can answer if you want. Does anybody know what that Sanskrit word is?
I think it's Sadhu Sangha.
Sadhu Sangha.
I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. And Karen, I think you put your hand up as well.
I'm not sure. I think Satsang.
Satsang. Thank you, Karen. So they're both correct. I was thinking of what Karen said. But what Walter said is the same. Sadhu, Sangha, means to be with the sadhu, the holy person, the teacher. Guru Sangha, to be with the guru. But the word I was thinking of was Satsang. Thank you, Karen. See, the clue is in the name of the meeting. So Bhagavan has given us 3 authoritative teaching verses on the topic of satsang. He's given us more than 3, but he's given us 3 that appear in one of his texts. The 40 verses on reality, the supplement to the 40 verses on reality. The first 3 verses. First 3 verses are all about satsang. But before we come on to those, would anybody like to read the invocatory verses?
O Sri Ramana, bestow your grace upon me so that I may in experience flawlessly attain the unequaled and unsurpassed essence of the practice, sadhana, of self-knowledge. The excellent path, who am I, which you have discovered to be the central and foremost amongst all the various paths. O Sri Ramana, the heart, who through your grace protects me at every moment by guiding me along the correct path, rise from within and teach me the true import of your divine and unequaled teachings, so that I may know them in their undefiled, pristine purity. Om Shri Ramana, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Wonderfully read. Much appreciated. Thank you, Rahul. So I've just posted into the chat the first 3 verses of the supplement to the 40 verses in reality, which were composed by beloved Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. But you can see, actually, these verses were not composed by him, because he saw no need to reinvent the wheel. If a verse was already written and it was good enough, he just used that verse and put it into his own work. So, can everybody see the verses I put into the chat? Don't worry if you can't. Don't worry if you can't. Some of you are using different devices and things. But at the end of each verse, it has the source from where he actually took the verse. The first verse is actually a verse from Shankara. And the second and third verses are from Yoga Vasishtha. Would anyone like to read? Maybe would someone like to read the first verse, and then maybe we can have, if we get enough volunteers, we can have one person reading each of the verses. Anyone like to read the first verse?
In the company of sages, attachments vanishes, and with attachment, illusion. Freed from illusion, one attains stability and thence liberation while yet alive. Seek therefore the company of sages.
In the company of sages, attachment vanishes. This phrase, company of sages, this is a translation of Satsang. Remember, Sat means reality. Sang or Sangha means together with or association with. So Satsang means being with the reality, the truth. Typically, it's translated as being with the teacher or company of sages, association with the sage. Sometimes you'll see it translated as association with good people. Good people meaning the sage, the liberated being. The external meaning is to be in a group with a teacher in human form or physical form. The deeper meaning is to abide as the self, which we'll see in verse 2. But in verse 1, we have, in the company of sages, attachment vanishes. Yeah, in Satsang, attachment vanishes. And with attachment, illusion. That means with attachment vanishing, illusion or ignorance also vanishes. Freed from illusion, what is the illusion? The illusion is the ignorance, I am the body-mind, the belief I am the body-mind. Freed from illusion, one attains stability and thence liberation while yet alive. While yet alive means we don't have to wait till next lifetime. We don't have to wait till next lifetime. It means in this lifetime. That's what it means. Seek therefore the company of sages. Seek therefore Satsang. Anyone would like to read verse 2? Kate, Kathleen, welcome.
Not by listening to preachers, nor by study of books, not by meritorious deeds, nor by any other means can one attain that supreme state, which is attainable only through association with the sages and the clear quest of the self. A verse from the Yoga Vasishtha, 5-12, verse 17.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you so much. Verse 2, not by listening to preachers. This means when we receive the answers to our questions, or with some teachers, the the teachings that we didn't even ask for, you know, when we received the teachings, not by listening to preachers, nor by study of books. I mean, this is the two of the main ways that people do spiritual seeking, isn't it? They listen to teachers and they read books. Not, and this verse is saying, this is not the way to liberation, not by listening to teachers or preachers, nor by study of books, nor by meritorious deeds. That means the other common teaching we hear is just do good, just be good, do good. That is spirituality. But that is not spirituality. That may be a part of spirituality. All of these may be a part of spirituality. This is not the means of liberation. What about any other means? Well, the verse says, not by listening to preachers, nor by study of books, not by meritorious deeds, nor by any other means can one attain that supreme state, which is attainable only through association with the sages, Satsang, and the clear quest of the self, means self-inquiry. This is from Yoga Vasishtha. It says, not by listening to preachers, nor by study of books, not by meritorious deeds. Then it says, nor by any other means. Can one attain that supreme state? This is the state of liberation, oneness. Only through association with sages and the clear quest for the self. This means only by being with Bhagavan, our Guru. This is why we're here together. This is the teaching. Now it says here, not by listening to preachers, nor by study of books, but this is written in a book. This is a verse from Yoga Vasishtha. It's written in a book, isn't it? And presumably, Yoga Vasishtha is the record of a dialogue that took place between a teacher and a seeker. It doesn't matter who they were for this context, but essentially, this is a recording in a book of a teaching. So, but this verse is saying not by listening to preachers, nor by study of books. So this preaching, this book, is telling you that there's something else. There's some other magical ingredient needed for liberation. Liberation is the closest thing to us. It's closer than anything else. Even the word closer doesn't apply because it's our very own self. So looking for it in all these other ways, we miss the mark. This is why it says, nor by any other means can one attain that supreme state. But when we come into contact with the teacher, initially, for most of us, it will be an external teacher to start off with, an embodiment of some kind, maybe a human being, maybe the holy mountain Arunachala, or maybe some other form that you receive your teacher, you perceive your teacher in. But eventually we discover the outer form is just the outer form of the teacher is just a reflection of the true teacher within. So when you come to satsang, please receive this teaching. Open your heart Open your being, open up as much as you are able to the energy, frequency, the vibration of the teaching that takes you inwards. You understand? If you're hurrying and scurrying and looking and fretting, trying to understand, trying to discover with the mind, with the ego, what's going on here, that won't help you that much. You may discover some things. You might discover some things that you think are truly wonderful, and maybe they are. But eventually you'll see that all the discoveries with the mind are superficial, utterly superficial. And we have to cross the river of suffering with the bridge created by our hearts, not our minds. This is in Satsang. This is the connection we forge with the teacher in Satsang. When you make contact with your teacher, deep contact, personal contact with the teacher, hopefully you don't need me to tell you that it's non-physical contact. It's not physical contact. It's spiritual contact. No physical contact needed. Spiritual contact. When you start to make that connection, or you make that connection, as I've alluded to before, the metaphor I've used is like on one of those water slides in the theme park. You go in the top and it just takes you. You just end up going down this water slide and come up at the end. Liberation. You get into a current of flow or something like this. And this is alluded to using a different metaphor, more traditional metaphor, you'll be happy to hear, than the water slide metaphor, which is a non-traditional metaphor. You'll hear a similar metaphor in verse 3. Would anybody like to read the third verse? Sarah and Gordon. Gordon. Was that Gordon?
Verse 3. When one has learned to love the company of sages, wherefore all these rules of discipline? When a pleasant, cool southern breeze is blowing, what need is there for a fan? That's from Yoga Vashishta.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you very much. So when we get into that channel, that current, that spiritual contact with our teacher, then what do we need of anything else? See, traditionally, there are all these rules that you've got to follow, depending on what station in life you are and what stage of life you are. You know, are you a householder? Are you a renunciate? Are you young? Are you elderly? Are you, well, whatever your role is in society, yeah, there'll be certain things you're expected to do. And maybe some things you're expected not to do. And this is all there to help your spiritual development, all these rules and regulations. And to help society run. This is the idea. Whether you agree with that or not, we won't go into that. But this verse is saying, when you have fallen in love with your teacher, that's what it says. It doesn't use those words. When you have fallen in love with your teacher, then what is the need of all these societal or religious, societal religious rules and regulations. Just like when a nice, what to say, when a pleasant, cool southern breeze is blowing, what need is there for a fan? You don't need a fan when there's a lovely, cool breeze blowing. You don't need a fan. You've got something that's better than a fan. It's cooling you down naturally, replenishing you. A pleasant, cool southern breeze is much more pleasant than a fan. It does what a fan does, and it's better. Similarly, all these rules are meant to be there to help your spiritual progress. But when you have fallen, and when you are with your teacher, then what do you need all these other things for? Because you have the greatest help. So verse 3 says, when one has learned to love Satsang, the company of sages, Satsang, wherefore all these rules of discipline? Like you must meditate, or you must chant, or you must do this spiritual discipline or that spiritual discipline. When a pleasant, cool southern breeze is blowing, what need is there for a fan? It's a verse from the Yoga Vasishtha. And Bhagavan Ramana has chosen these, the first 3 verses in this supplement to his 40 verses on reality. So when you come to satsang, try and be with your teacher. If you're doing something else, then you're coming to satsang, but you are not really coming to satsang. And that's okay, by the way. You know, I don't know what your mental state's going to be like, each and every one of you, when you arrive here. But if you understand that the purpose of satsang is to connect with Sat, truth. Sat means truth, reality, self, God, Bhagavan. This is what will deliver you. To understand. Well, any questions on this or these verses, this teaching? Any questions on this specific topic? So, when you do your spiritual practice, all you have to do is be with your teacher in your heart. And you're very welcome to substitute a different teacher in for when I say Ramana, if you want to. Although if you're able to come to Bhagavan Ramana, this is very good. From my point of view, from my sort of biased point of view, this is the best. But of course, you must do what is right for you. As I say sometimes, all blessings come from Guru, the teacher. At least this is my experience. We can try and wrap our brains and try and figure things out. Do lots of reading and listening. How far will it get us? The mind will never be sure about these sorts of things. Or when I say never be sure, even when it is sure, even when it's certain about the teachings, you just wait a bit, give it time, and the uncertainty will come back again, the doubts will come back again. Because with the mind, the uncertainties will always come back again. It's the nature of the mind. Even when you're not confused, if you're totally clear on what the teaching is all about, what your path is all about, you're totally clear, 100% clear, just give it time. The clarity will at some point fade away, disappear. This is the nature of the mind. Doubts will recur. They'll always come back again. But not with the self, not with your heart, your essence. Not with Guru Bhagavan. There's a steadiness, can never be rocked, will never be removed. Sure-footedness, the sure-footedness is always there when you connect to it. The more that we connect to it, the more harmonious and peaceful life becomes, the more intuitive and spiritual our daily life becomes. And when Bhagavan is ready, he takes us into himself and he crushes us into him. And absorbs us into him. Bless you to the person who sneezes. Until then, we just have to keep on connecting. Verse 2 tells us that supreme state, which is attainable only through association with the sages. That's what I've been talking about, connecting. Yeah? Connecting with the teacher. That supreme state, which is attainable only through association with the sages, and the clear quest of the self, self-inquiry. Do not forget Bhagavan's teaching on self-inquiry. What does that mean? That means never think of the teacher, or when I say never think of, see if you can intuit, or when you connect with your teacher, the one teacher, only one teacher, when you connect with Guru or teacher, source, see if you can realize non-verbally in your heart that that is what you are. So it is not something outside of you. The danger of all this talk of satsang, of being with teacher, is that you think of the teacher as being separate to you. Whereas this is pointed out that you are that. If we just say, discover the self, the danger is that we try and discover the self as the mind tries to discover the self. It doesn't work. We have to surrender to Bhagavan and he will take us to the self. We have to connect with our teacher. We have to surrender to Bhagavan and he will take us to the self. If we only mention connecting with the teacher, then we might think that we might not realize the teacher is our own self. So if we take any one of these two teachings, verse 2 it says, attainable only through association with the sages and the clear quest of the self. If we take just one of these two, there's a danger. If you say only through satsang, you become dependent on another. If you omit the clear quest for the self-teaching, you might think, if you omit the association with the sages part, if you only say self-inquiry, then you might think, I need to discover the self, I meaning the mind. That doesn't work either. So we have to connect with Bhagavan and realize that I am He. He is I. And this is only possible by His grace, through satsang. So whether there's speaking going on in this meeting, in this satsang meeting, or no speaking going on, the teaching is always being given. It's always emanating, always radiating out. Of course, that is true, even when we're not in this meeting. But it's often more palpable, more accessible when we come together. Okay, thank you, everybody. My love to you all, always.